This morning, we're going to talk about Har Zion, the mountain of Zion. What is Har Zion? Why is it so important? And how does it connect with this week's Torah portion? The Torah portion begins, Vayishlach Yaakov Malachim. Jacob sends angels to Esau. Why does Yaakov send angels to Esau? Yaakov Avinu, being one of the major leaders of Israel, the patriarchs of Israel, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, they knew the purpose of creation. They knew their mission here on this world, and that is to bring perfection to the world, to make a dwelling place for God down here on this world, and to bring about the ultimate geula, the ultimate redemption with Mashiach. And so, Yaakov tells Esau, I know that I need you to participate in this relationship, in this mission, in this perfection, because Mashiach is not only for the Jewish people, Mashiach is for the entire world, and therefore I need you on my side. And therefore he tells Esau, Vayishlach Yaakov Malachim. He says, you should know, Im Lavan Garti. I was 20 years in the house of Lavan. I did my job. As Rashi tells us, Tayag Mitzvah Shemarti, I followed and protected the 613 commandments of the Torah. I am ready now for Mashiach. I suffered, I worked, I built, and now I, Yaakov Avinu, being the Neshama Kololis, he was a general soul of all the souls in the world. He says, I am now ready to bring about the coming of Mashiach. Esau, are you ready? And Esau comes back, the angels, and they say, Esau has 400 armed men with him. He's ready to fight. He's not ready for no Mashiach. He's not ready for no peace. He's ready for war. Now, interestingly, according to Kabbalah, where does Esau get these 400 men? This is from the $400 that Abraham gave Ephron. The $400 represents the ultimate level of bliss. At the time of the burial of Sarah, he buys the Maras HaMachpelah for 400 silver dollars, and that alludes to the world after, the world of pleasure, 400 worlds of pleasure. And that is the $400 he gives Ephron. From those $400 came about the 400 men of Esau. And eventually, when Mashiach comes, Ephron is going to return the $400 to Avraham. In other words, it's going to be elevated back to its original purpose. And the interim goes through its transmigration. And now Esau has 400 men because of these $400, and Yaakov realizes he's not ready for Mashiach. So Yaakov says, if that is the case, I will do it myself. And he starts by sending Esau a mincha, a gift, to awaken within him his purpose. As we know in Kabbalah, Esau represents the worlds of chaos, Olam HaTohu, which has within it tremendous light, tremendous energy, but very little vessels. In that world, we have SEFIRAT HA'OMER, the breaking of the vessels. And now all those fragmented pieces came down to this world. The job of Yaakov and every person who follows Torah is to elevate these sparks from these shattered vessels, return it to its source, and by doing so, we merge the two worlds together, the world of Tohu, the world of chaos, with tremendous energy and light, together with the world of Tikkun, the world of fixing, and the world of refinement. So Yaakov moves on to plan B, and that is he sends Esau a mincha, he sends him gifts to awaken within Esau these deeper reservoirs of emotion and power to win him over, to bring him back down to this world, to unite these two worlds together. Esau gets excited with the mincha. He gives Yaakov a kiss. He kisses him, and the word in the Torah, Vayishakeyu, has dots on it. I talk about it in my book, By Divine Design, why it has these dots. Some say because he did not kiss him with all his heart. Others say he kissed him with all his heart, but only at that moment did he love Yaakov, but before and after he didn't love Yaakov anymore. And Esau says, you know what, now that I love you, let's travel together. We'll rent a plane, take a first-class seat, we'll sit next to each other, and we'll have time to chat. And Yaakov says, no, thank you, Esau. He was afraid that Esau would turn on him. What does he tell Esau? He tells Esau in verse number 14, Yavrna Adoni lifnei avdoi, vani esnalo leiti liregel hamelacha, asher lefanai uliregel hayeladim ad asher avoy el Adoni seira. Loosely translated, he says, look, I'll take my time. I need to go slow. I have children, I have cattle. If they go too fast, if you push them, they're going to die. You go, I'll meet up with you. Where? Se'era in Seir. That's what he says. Now the question is, Yaakov Avinu tells Esau, wait up for me, and I'm going to meet up with you. Did that ever happen? Or will that happen? Says Rashi the following. Rashi says, you should know, what does it mean here in Pasuk 14, Yudalid, Ve'masayelech. When did he go? Says Rashi, Bimei HaMashiach, in the days of Mashiach. In the days of Mashiach, then Yaakov will finally meet up with Esau. Shenemar. And he quotes a verse. And this is the verse, a very famous verse. We say it every day in our prayers. And it's the verse of the Haftorah of this Shabbos, in the book of Avadia. It says, V'olu Moshim Bahar Tzion Lishpoit es Har Esau. And it says, and the saviors will come up to Mount Sinai. I'm sorry. The saviors will come up to Har Tzion, the Mount of Zion. Where's the Mount of Zion? Lishpoit es Har Esau, and they will judge the mountain of Esau. And that's the end of Rashi. The question is, what is Har Tzion? What is the purpose of Har Tzion? And why does he have to go there to judge Esau? Now, it's interesting to note that the Medrash also has this story, a bit different, and the Medrash uses the word la'asid lavoi. When will Yaakov meet up with Esau? La'asid lavoi, in the world to come. Now, the question is why the different terminologies. It's for another discussion. But on these words of Avay el Adoni Se'eda, I will come and go to my master in Seir. So these words, when I will come to my master in Seir, says Rabbeinu Bechaya. If you take the last letters of these four words, in verse number 14, Avay el Adoni Se'eda, you have an Aleph, a Lamid, a Yud, and a Hey. Spells out the word Eliyahu. Eliyahu Hanavi, Elijah the prophet, who will be the harbinger of the Mashiach, who will tell us that Mashiach is about to come. Get ready. Prepare yourself for the ultimate Geula. So in these words, I will come to you. Don't wait for me, but I will show up. This represents Eliyahu Hanavi. This is the interpretation of Rabbeinu Bechaya. And he says it's right here in the verse, those four letters. Now it's interesting to note that throughout the Tanakh, throughout the prophets, the 24 books of the Torah, the name Eliyahu, Elijah, 5 times is spelled with a missing vav. Instead of Eliyahu, it's only Eliyah. And the commentaries explain that Jacob, Yaakov Avinu, in this week's Parsha, took the letter Vav from Eliyahu. He took that letter Vav 5 times. And that is why Yaakov in the Torah 5 times has an additional Vav. Normally Yaakov is spelled Yud, Aleph, Kuf, Beis. 5 times in the Torah, Yaakov has an additional Vav. Why did he grab the Vav? He grabbed the Vav as security, as a guarantee. You want your Vav back. you better show up. You better redeem the Jewish people. If not, you don't get the Vav back. And the Maral says the Vav, the 5 Vavs represent the 5 fingers, alluding to a handshake, a deal. He made a deal with Eliyahu Hanavi. You come back, you get your Vav. If not, you lose it. So Eliyah is spelled in this week's Parsha, in this verse, when I will come to my master in Seir. That is when Eliyahu Hanavi, Elijah the prophet, will come. Now, what does it mean? V'olu Mashiach Bahar Tzion, and the saviors will come up to the mountain of Zion. Factually, the mountain of Zion is adjacent to Har HaMoriah, right next to the Temple Mount in Jerusalem today. There's Har HaMoriah, and then there's Har Tzion. Har Tzion is actually 770 meters higher, or rather 770 meters above sea level, and it is higher than Har HaMoriah, Mount Moriah, which is the Temple Mount. Because the Temple Mount, as it says in the Torah, is Bein Kesefav Shachein, between the shoulders shall you rest. God dwells between the shoulders, implying that the Mount Moriah is a bit lower. However, according to the prophets, when Mashiach comes, it's going to become the highest of all the mountains. So Har Tzion is right near Har Moriah, it's a bit higher. And it says when Mashiach will come, the day that Yaakov will meet up with Esau, the saviors will come on to Zion, and they will judge Esau. Who are the Moshiim? Who are the saviors? If you look into the commentaries, the Radak, David Kimchi says that the Moshiim represent, number 1, Melech HaMashiach, the Messiah himself, who's the King Messiah. Number 2, and his friends. He has good friends. Who are his friends? The 7 Shivaroyim, the 7 shepherds, and the Shemoina Nesichi Adam, and the 8 officers. He will come with the 7 shepherds and the 8 officers. Where do we find this concept of shepherds and officers? Is a verse in Micha, in the book of Micha, chapter number 5, verse number 4. Who are these 7 royim, the 7 shepherds? There seems to be a discrepancy. In the tractate of Sukkah, on page 52, side B, it says you have on one hand Adam, Shes, V'Shelach, David HaMelech in the middle, and then to the left, Abraham, Yaakov, Moshe. Now, obviously, the question comes to mind, Abraham, Yaakov, Moshe, where is Yitzchak? Excellent question. And the commentaries say he went to hell to pull out the Jewish souls, to pull out the neshamos. Mashiach is here. We got to get all the souls out of hell. So he's there, bringing out all those souls, bringing them back to the Geula, the redemption. And that's why the Talmud says about Yitzchak, Ki ata avinu, you are truly our father. You care about us. You're coming to save us. However, we find in the writings of the Alter Rebbe and Chassidus that one of the 7 shepherds is Aaron HaKohen. So on one hand it says Aaron, on the other hand he's missing from these 7 shepherds, and we're also missing Yitzchak. Now Aaron HaKohen is known to be one of the shepherds, as we find that he was the one who lit the menorah in the Beis HaMikdash every day. The idea of lighting the menorah is not simply because he ignited some light in the temple, but rather he ignited the souls of all the Jewish people. He was what you call a Roya Yisrael. He was a shepherd. What is a shepherd? To shepherd faith. These 7 shepherds shepherd faith to all Jewish people. Moshe Rabbeinu was considered to be the greatest of all the shepherds. He was the Raya Mehemda, the faithful shepherd. He administered the faith to the Jewish people by giving them the Torah and Sinai. But the truth is, all of these shepherds, and the truth is the leaders of every generation are shepherds, because their job is to shepherd with love and kindness and compassion, faith to Am Yisrael. That is the definition of a shepherd. And in Chassidus, it says that Aaron HaKohen was a shepherd. Someone once asked the Rebbe, how do we reconcile these two things? And the Rebbe quoted from the Zohar. He says, in the Zohar there is a different list of these shepherds. And they are, in the Zohar says, Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Adam, Aaron, David, Shlomo. Now Moshe is missing over here, according to the Zohar. And here too the Rebbe says that Aaron and Moshe are really one. Lachlala da b'da, because it says that he will be there. He, Aaron and Moshe. So it's in the singular, implying they were together, they worked together. Sometimes Moshe's name is mentioned, including Aaron. Other times Aaron's name is mentioned, including Moshe. Who are the 8 officers? The Shemoyin and the Sichi Adam, they're going to go up with Mashiach to Har Tzion. Who is that? Says the Gemara like this. The 8 Nesichi Adam are Yishai, the father of King David, Shaul HaMelech, Shmuel, Amos, Zephaniah, Tzidkiyahu HaMelech, Mashiach, and Eliyahu. So according to this, Mashiach himself is one of these 8 Nesichi Adam. And now you understand the number 7 and the number 8. There are 7 Royim, 7 shepherds, and there are 8 Nesichi Adam. The 7 shepherds represent the 7 prongs of the menorah, which is Hanukkah, which is the holy temple. The 8 Nesichi Adam represent the 8 candles in the menorah. 8 is beyond nature. 7 is nature. And that's why Mashiach is in the 8 Nesichi Adam, because Mashiach will bring a new world order. When Mashiach comes, the world will be beyond nature. That is the time that we're going to connect the world of Tohu and the world of Tikkun, Esau and Yaakov together. We're going to connect the infinite, which is Tohu, Esau, together with the finite, which is Yaakov, and make it one. On a deeper level, what is the difference between the 8 and the 7? The 8 represents what we call in Kabbalah the Makif, the all-encompassing light. It's a very powerful light that we cannot internalize, but it's very strong, like the world of chaos. 7 represents the vessels, to internalize the light. It's not as powerful, the light, but it's something that I can internalize. If you eat food and you chew it properly, you're able to acquire strength from the food. If you swallow food whole, it doesn't digest. This is one of the interpretations that if Yitzchak would have given the blessings to Esau, it would have been one of 2 things, says Kabbalah. Either Esau would have died, or it would be like eating big chunks of food that would not give him any type of sustenance. So 8 represents this tremendous light. And it's also understood within the names of the 7 and the 8. For example, in the 7, you have Avraham. In the 8, you have Eliyahu. You hear? Avraham, Eliyahu. Avraham and Eliyahu both are connected to what? To the bris milah, to the circumcision. Avraham Avinu was the first one to be circumcised. Eliyahu Navi visits every circumcision. But there's a big difference. The difference is Avraham Avinu was only commanded to circumcise the thick foreskin. He was not commanded to do what we call priya. Priya means to remove the membrane, the thin skin, on top of the bris. This represents 2 levels of revelation. In the time of Avraham Avinu, there was a certain revelation that only demanded the removal of the larger skin. In the time of Eliyahu Navi, there now became a greater revelation, a greater light, and therefore now the obligation of Priya to remove also the additional skin. So again, Avraham Avinu, and similarly the Jews in the desert, were not obligated to do Priya, only the outside layer. Later, the commandment was added to remove also the inner layer. And this is the same concept of 7 and 8. Till Mashiach comes, we have the 7, the outer layer of revelation. Once Mashiach comes, we have the number 8, a greater level of revelation. So Mashiach is going to go up to Har Tzion. He's going to judge Esau. Why Esau? Because Esau represents Rome, but also Esau represents the rest of the world. And Esau is now going to be judged. Esau is not going to be destroyed. It doesn't say he's going to destroy Esau. He's going to judge Esau. He's going to transform Esau, to take all these raw materials, all these nations of the world, and he's going to bring them from Mount Zion to Mount Moriah. All the nations are going to stream now to Jerusalem, and they're going to stream to the Holy Temple. And then, how does the pasuk conclude? V'hoisa laHashem hamelucha, and God will then have the kingdom. Now, what does that mean? The kingdom is really Har Tzion. Har Tzion, Mount Zion, was Ir David, was where King David built his palace. It was where King David is buried, where Shlomo HaMelech is buried, where Chizkiah HaMelech is buried. Chizkiah HaMelech, says the Gemara, was a big tzaddik. He made sure that every synagogue should have candles to learn Torah all night. And they checked. Badku midon bar Beersheva. They went from Dan to Beersheva and they checked every boy and girl. And they asked them questions in Torah. Every single Jewish boy and girl was totally knowledgeable in the whole Torah, including the laws of Tumah, V'tara, purity and impurity, which are the most difficult laws to master. And the Gemara says God wanted to make Chizkiah the Mashiach. So all these kings are now on this mountain. So now it makes sense that by going on to the mountain of the kings, God will be the king. That is where we're going to first anoint God, so to speak, as the king of the entire world. And from there, to rebuild the third holy temple. I want to share a very powerful story, talking about the mountain of Zion, talking about the promise in this week's Torah portion where Jacob says, I'm going to meet up with you, Esau, and it's going to be on Har Tzion. They tell a story that there was a famous Jewish explorer, and he wrote a book called The Journeys of Binyamin. And in 1173, he tells the following story. He was in Jerusalem, and he went to Mount Zion. And he heard of this story from an old sage that lived in Jerusalem. At that time, the priests were trying to build something on Har Tzion from one of the walls that collapsed from King David. They were trying to build an altar, and they hired 20 workers to build this altar. And the two of the workers liked to party. So at night, the night before, they were partying, and they slept a bit late the next morning. And when they came late to work, the foreman said, what happened to you? He said, look, we were up late last night having parties, but we're going to give you the time. Instead of taking off the lunch break for an hour, we're going to continue working. So when it came to lunch, and the rest of the group sat down, they continued to work. And as they're working, they see a cave. They decided to explore. They walk into this cave, and they see this amazing big palace inside the cave. They had these gorgeous, gorgeous marble beams, and they see a table. And on the table, there's a crown and a scepter. And then they see graves. The grave of King David. They see the grave of King Solomon. And they say, hey, let's go check what's inside over there. There must be a lot of money here. A lot of gold, a lot of silver. And as they're about to enter, a big wind comes and shoots these guys out of the cave. And they fall on their face, and they're totally knocked out unconscious. A while later, they hear another voice. Get up and get out of here. And the voice woke them up, and they ran away trembling. They came back to the foreman. They said, what's going on? He says, you can't go over there. You can't go into that cave. There are monsters there. There are demons there. There's something going on over there, but it's dangerous. The foreman called a rabbi, Rabbi Avraham, who lived in Jerusalem and said, "Can you tell us what's going on over here? Because my workers ran into that cave and they went out crazy." He says, "That is the cave where King David and Solomon and other kings are buried there. And you're not allowed to go there. You go there and you see what's going to happen." So the foreman decided he's going to close up the cave. So they took these giant stones that fell off from the wall and they covered the face of the cave. So this is one of the signs and one of the hints how Har Zion, the mountain of Zion, is actually where the palace of King David was, and also the tombs of King David and many of the kings of Israel, prophets, Kohanim Gedolim, high priests, who are buried there in Har Zion. So we hope and pray as we speak about Vayishlach Yaakov Malachim, as we speak about Jacob sending these angels to Esau to tell him the time for your redemption has arrived, that this will be the final Parsha, the final week, even before Hanukkah, to see the Gula, Hamidus Vashlema, the ultimate redemption with the coming of Mashiach from Heida Vimenu. Amen. Okay, any questions?